morning and a warm welcome to all our resource person, chairperson, and all the presenter here. As we have come to the second day of this session, we are going to start this session with a lecture from one of the eminent resource person, Mr. Ranjit Thomas, Assistant Professor from National Law University, Jodhpur. So we will start this session. I would like to call Uttam Rava to deliver an introduction speech to our resource person. Uttam, are you there? Please, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for handing over the session to me. A very good morning to one and all present here today. My name is Uttam Rava, and I'll be the host for your session today. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome Mr. Ranjit Thomas. Mr. Ranjit Thomas is currently working as an assistant professor of law and also an executive director of the Center for Citizen Rights Advocacy and Center for Criminal Law. Studies at the National Law University, Jodhpur. He has specialization in criminal law and is currently doing an extensive research work on the topic of jurisprudence of sentencing in India. His areas of expertise and inter alia include philosophy of criminal law, administration of criminal justice system, and sentencing. He has delivered more than 80 expert lectures on various topics, which include sentencing issues and challenges, admissibility of forensic evidence in criminal trial and arrest and trial procedures. He has, to his credit, several national publications and has participated in numerous professional training programs, conferences, workshops, and seminars, and has conducted a few by himself. In 2018, he was selected as the visiting scholar to Faculty of Law, University of Oxford, in legal and technical support to the proper implementation of Integrated Child Protection Scheme, ICPS, Criminal Justice Act 2015 in the state of Rajasthan. Currently, he is a visiting faculty of Law, Academy, and Internal Security Academy. He is also affiliated with several judicial academies in the Intelligence Bureau and Bureau of Police Research and Development. We are highly obliged to have you on board with us today. And sir, before I hand over the session to you, I would like to mention the rules for the paper presenters. That is, each paper presenter has been allotted a time of 15 minutes. And paper presenters, please do keep in mind that you don't exceed the time limit for the smooth functioning of the program. And if any paper presenter has any questions, please type it in the chat box so that later, after the session is over, we can take care of that. And sir, for your ease of convenience, if you want me to call out the names of the participants, please do let me know. And sir, over to you now.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, very audible.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yesterday, for the second time, I was going through all the abstracts which were presenting for these 2 days, running more than 4 sessions, near about 10 sub-themes, and I got the opportunity to read 29 abstracts. So I think the intention behind reading all these abstracts were to an extent personal, to pitch in the topic which I'm going to discuss. I think all the abstracts were very good. I think I'm not in a position to attend all the sessions and everything, that is right. So when I'm going through all these abstracts, running more than 29, I was trying to pitch in about one area, that is the silence of this, abstract, or you can say the silence of the contribution from the participants. That is about how criminal law is having an interplay with environmental law. Why I'm saying about criminal law? Because if you see the last year's statistics, there is more than 87% increase in environmental crimes. And if you try to see, the statistics which I'm relying is of 2020, and we don't have any statistics relating to 2021. So when I'm thoroughly perusing the statistics, I think for me, it's like, 87% increase in environmental crime. That is one issue. Second is about the whole architecture of environmental law through the lens of criminal law. Both are problematic, that is the conceptual structure and the operational structure for a person who is looking through the lens of criminal law. So I will be discussing about the interplay or the need of imposing criminal responsibility for environmental harms. So how we can think about. So I just want to raise certain questions relating to that aspect. That is text with a context. And I will leave it to the participants to delve on those aspects and everything. See, if you try to see the impact of environmental crime, you can see that from the statistic itself, it is increasing. You take, I'm not going into the multi, dimensions of what type of pollution, about, degradation of wildlife, reducing the biodiversity, so on and so forth, how it is affecting the ecological balance. I'm not going into that. But one thing is clear from the statistics that the environmental crimes are increasing. There is an economic dimension to that. That is about the, it's very lucrative. So individuals and the organized crime groups are, in a competition to commit, these offenses. Why? Because of that economic dimension and everything. That is why this context is demanding the state to rethink on, resorting to, for an extent, how criminal responsibility or criminal law we can bring into the ambit of environmental law. That is by resorting to criminal law measures, how we can deal with these aspects and everything. So whenever we are discussing about criminal law, there is a problem with definition of crime and everything. But we can see that we started relaxing with the mens rea aspects and everything. We are more and more, resorting to criminal law for regulatory offenses and everything. So there is no issue relating to that, because the way in which we are discussing about the mens rea aspect right now, we are relaxing even to recklessness, or we can say to an extent reason to believe and everything. So the definition of crime is not making much issue relating to resorting to criminal responsibility. At the same time, we need to set certain moral boundaries to determine the harm principle and everything. So when the harm is, because technically we used to seek for an individual victim and everything. When it comes to environmental law, that arena is bit vague, but there is no issue because harm is there. So harm principle we can rely and we can resort to criminal law and everything. So in this backdrop, I just want to say, if you try to see the architecture of environmental law through the lens of criminal law, we have multiple statutes. So I will be only dealing with the lens of criminal responsibility. If you try to see Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act or Environment Protection Act, or the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, air, I think, and some provisions of IPC and everything. We used to resort to CRPC also, 133 and all these things for precautionary, or we can say emergency cases and everything. The problem is mainly relating to how we are defining these offenses. If you read, I don't want to dissect the sections or anything. If you read section 268, punishment is there in 290. That is a fine of 200. Just see that how we are defining section 268 and prescribing punishment under 290. Try to see 277. Exactly what is exactly the problem with that section? It's about I think it is prescribing only imprisonment up to 3 months or something. That is what the punishment which is visiting if a person is committing an act under 277. Same with 278. If you go to 426, 430, 431, 432, there we can see that these provisions are not in a position to deal with the crime which are happening in the arena of environmental law. One is the poverty of definition. That I will deal with my conceptual structure bit. The another one is about when we try to enact this statute, we don't have much idea relating to how to pitch in to create an offense, keeping actus reus, mens rea, the victim and everything. So at that point of time, the whole jurisprudence of inserting these provisions by imposing criminal responsibility was in an entirely different arena, and the context itself is changed. So that is why I'm saying that we should revisit, we should restructure, revamp the text in the light of the new context which we are facing. For example, I'll just tell one instance. I was going through the Water Act. If you try to see Water Act, go to section 24. Section 24, I think one of the major issues relating to, we have some problem relating to defining even an offense there. If you try to see how the section 24 is structured, starting with subject to the provisions of this section, no person shall knowingly cause or permit. The problem here is that mens rea is knowledge. Do we need mens rea of knowledge here? Or we can relax it with reason to believe? Think about that, because whenever we are discussing about restructuring, revamping the conceptual structure, thereby creating new offenses and everything, please keep in mind one thing: it is our duty to approach it from a jurisprudential point of view, because we need justification for imposing criminal responsibility. So I'm saying that when we are trying to analyze the conceptual structure, one thing we know, there are certain problems relating to the one, poverty of defining. Second, clarity. I'll come to that aspect and everything. Just try to see how the mens rea aspect is coming here. Even if you come to 24 clause B, again saying the mens rea aspect of knowingly. That is, we are importing the mens rea of knowledge into the arena of environmental protection and everything. Think about that. So if we try to see the whole conceptual structure, we have problem relating to how we are defining the whole aspect. Second is about, I told you about clarity. And if you try to see the other section, section 47 of Water Act or 16 of Environment Act and everything, think about, in a changed scenario, these offenses are in a position to deal with the issues and challenges which we are facing, because we are discussing about emerging environmental issues and challenges. Whether these minuscule provisions creating offense can deal with any of these things in any manner. That is why I am arguing for this international conference should, give space for one, clarifying existing definitions of offenses, criminal offenses in India. Thereby, I think that is why whenever we are getting time and space to discuss about this matter, because why I am saying that we need clarity relating to defining offense, because that will provide the way for certainty, legal certainty. That is why, one, we need new definitions. Thereby, new definitions, we will give legal certainty, we will remove ambiguity, we will try to deal with the vagueness and everything, and thereby we can aid for the implementation structure. From here, I will try to go to the operational structure. If you try to see the operational structure, why I am saying about operational structure, considering the changed context, we should make, I think, changes. I'm saying about making relevant changes in the investigation and criminal proceedings. Why? Because we want to make it more effective. I don't know, any state or any government is spending money and manpower to deal with the, for example, the law enforcement authorities or the prosecutors, judge, because it is not a traditional offense which we are going to deal with. We are going to deal with a new era offense which we are creating because of it's a need of the hour. So we should think about, when it comes to operational structure, how we can make it effective. One is investigation, another one is prosecution, appreciation of evidence. Multiple things will come into picture, because that is why I'm saying that it's having multi-dimension. Even just take pollution. Pollution itself is having multi-dimensions and everything. When it comes to, Wildlife Act, just try to see that it's multiple dimensions relating to how forensic evidences are important to decide the matter and everything. So when it comes to operational structure also, we need clarity relating to how to implement, because one is about creating an offense. Please keep in mind one thing: by creating new offenses, we are not going to deal with anything. And the criminal law, whenever we are resorting to criminal law, we will think only about creating new offenses. According to me, by creating new offense, we are, appeasing the discussions. But the real intention is coming at the same time. When we are creating new offenses, we should keep in mind how this is going to implement. Implementation in the sense, how the investigation is going to happen, how we should train the people who are going to investigate in certain matters and everything. At the same time, the judges, immediately we should, I don't know whether we are seriously thinking about giving training to the judges to deal with environmental related matters and everything. So I think I just want to share my concern relating to if we are looking emerging environmental issues, challenges, and issues through the lens of criminal law. It's about relying, because why I'm saying the whole thing. Last month I was reading, exactly if my memory is correct, 30th December 2021. I was going through a report prepared by European Commission. They are seriously thinking about cooperation of different states relating to environmental matters, and they are arguing a lot. We will discuss exactly after 2 decades, because if they are discussing in 2021, we will discuss only after in 2040. That is what the gap which we are keeping. Right now, they realized, they are elaborately discussing. I am waiting for the full report related to how they are discussing about importing criminal responsibility. They are saying it's a high time to resort to criminal sanctions for protecting the environment. And let me, I think I'm finishing here. If you have any, query or anything, I'm ready to, we will discuss about that. I think I just want to congratulate, I think the person who compiled all these, abstracts and everything. I think the chief editor, editors, student editors, assistant editors, and the entire team behind this, conference. Thank you so much for your invitation, and to all the participants, all the best for your participation in the sense in this crucial conference by carving out time for participating and everything. And whenever participating in a conference relating to environment and everything, we have a dual role. One is to academics. At the same time, when matters like environment, that is why try to see, because mainly I used to read criminal law, but when I was studying my LLM and everything, I used to read Chhatrapati Singh. Chhatrapati Singh, I don't know, after Chhatrapati Singh, anybody in India seriously environmental jurisprudence. And this is the high time, this conference, I think, I'm taking this opportunity to remember Chhatrapati Singh for his contribution to the environmental law jurisprudence in India, though the academicians conveniently forget, Chhatrapati Singh. Okay, and this time we can even think about Chhatrapati Singh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable insights, sir. And we are very thankful for thankful to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time and be present here with us today. So everyone, sir, this is Ranjit Thomas, and he's our resource person for this session. And sir, now I'd like to hand over the session to my co-host, that is Lalrin. And Lalrin, please, session now over.
Good morning once again to all the participants here. So I think we should start with the session now. We are having Dr. Maria Clooney here as a chairperson on board. So all the best to all the participants for today's session. I would like to hand over the session to Lauren to give introduction of the present chairperson of the first session. So over to you, Lauren. Lauren, are you there? Over to you.
I think there's some connection problems. I think there's connection problems. Thank you, ma'am, very much for handing over the session to me. My name is Lauren Mohi, and I will be the host for the session. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Maria Lauren Mohi with us. I would like to speak some few words about ma'am. Dr. Maria Lauren Mohi is an assistant professor in Government Mizoram Law College. She was awarded a PhD degree in law, and her area of specialization is consumer protection law. She has also published a number of articles in journals, local newspapers, and have been presented as a resource person and has been presented as a resource person in a number of national and state level seminars. Ma'am was recently a principal investigator of research team Mizoram. She completed and submitted her report of pro bono statewide research project on prison administration, which was organized in collaboration with Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, a center for research in criminal justice. Before ma'am take over the session, I would like to highlight some of the few rules. Firstly, the paper presenter are requested to complete their presentation within the time allotted, that is 15 minutes only. Secondly, others are requested to raise hand or put down the questions in the chat box if any. Ma'am, you may now take the time.
Thank you, Larin, for giving such a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone. I am Dr. Maria Larin Moye, Assistant Professor, Government Mizoram Law College. And on behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome each and every one of you who attended the first program of this session on the topic, Emerging Environmental Issues and Challenges. As we all know, environmental issues are a major concern and a pressing need. And it is a great pleasure for me to lead the program, the first session, and I do hope that we will all get benefit from this session. So coming to our main program, in this session, we will be having 4 speakers to discuss about the theme on emerging environmental issues and challenges. But due to time constraint, each speaker will be having only 15 minutes to speak about their topic. So first and foremost, I would like to request Mr. Amit Trikha, our resource person, to present a paper on the topic. Today's focus on climate change, their impacts and adaptation, current scenario. Sir, the screen is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and very warm welcome to all the participants in this two-day international conference. So my topic of this research is today's focus on climate change, the impacts and adaptation, and that is the current scenario. So climate change is one of the most promising environmental issues confronting the globe today, and climate events are disruptive when they cause harm to individuals and natural, social and economical assets on which they rely, as well as when societies are unable to manage, respond and recover successfully. So in this research area, we have to discuss what precautionary measures we have to take to cope up with the rising climatic adverse situations which are affecting adversely on our society. Now, it is rightly said that just like our bodies, the environmental functions best when it is in balance. Unfortunately, we are not quite there. Issues like pollution, depletion of resources, the rise of consumerism and the throwaway culture have led to serious issues. That being said, the fight is not over yet, and more people than ever are both aware of and active in the protection of the environment. Climate change is again associated with various adverse impacts on agriculture, water resources, forest and biodiversity, health, coastal management, and increase in temperature. Decline in agriculture productivity is the main impact of climate change on India, and climate change would represent additional stress on the ecological and socio-economic system that are already facing tremendous pressure due to rapid industrialization, urbanization, and economic development. Moreover, in health sector as well, climate change and the resulting rising temperature and altered rainfall patterns are creating ideal conditions for transmission of infectious diseases like dengue, chikungunya, Zika, malaria, and it may also lead to more deaths, crop failure, mental health problem, pregnancy-related complications, heat and humidity, morbidity. So we are not prepared yet to strengthen the healthcare systems, but still we can take some immediate steps like establish public health goals for protecting the health of humans and ecosystem, providing information and education to public to promote empowerment and accountability, integrating precautionary considerations into the research agenda to facilitate rapid interventions to prevent damage to health and minimizing so far as possible unintended adverse consequences that may be caused by precautionary actions. Technological developments have also provided important benefits to health and environment, there is no doubt, and energy provision, waste and water treatment system, modern housing transport, modern food production and distribution system, immunization, pest control and telecommunications have played important role in improving the health and the quality of life while increasing life expectancy and protecting the environment. Moreover, cyclones like Taute and Gulab, which bookended the summer's monsoon in 2021, have increased and are set to increase even further. To prevent the worst projections, a consensus has emerged to limit warming 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2099, but the need to adapt to climate change has grown increasingly significant and urgent at the same time. Now it is more important to understand how changing climate will affect the ocean. The rise in water levels can have potentially large impact, and global tidal records from 1900 to 1990 shows an estimated 4 to 5 inch rise in global mean sea level. Then in the next 25 years, from 1990 to 2015, this global tide gauge network showed global sea level rise 3 inches, agreeing with the measures by satellite altimeters taken since 1992. Currently, sea level is now rising about 1/8 of an inch per year, and now it is again projected to rise in the future, and by the next few years, the level may rise another 1 to 8 feet. To cope up with these climate changes, India Adaptation Fund on Climate Change, and to solve all these problems, we have a National Action Plan on Climate Change as well. But it is found that the climate change is primarily due to human influence, according to IPCC report. As far as monsoon is concerned, it has weakened in the second half of 20th century, mainly due to aerosols from human activity. Moreover, the emissions of greenhouse gases from human activities are also responsible for approximately 1.1 degrees Celsius of warming since 1850 to 1900, and finds that averaged over the next 20 years, global temperature is expected to increase or exceed even 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. The main cause for rising emissions are from human interventions like burning coal, oil and gas, cutting down forests, increasing livestock farming, fertilizers containing nitrogen which produce nitrous oxide emissions, fluorinated gases, and as far as again global warming is concerned, 2011 to 2020 was the warmest decade recorded, with global average temperature reaching 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels in 2019. Human-induced global warming is presently increasing again at a rate of 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. Carbon dioxide produced by human activities again is the largest contributor to global warming, and by 2020 again its concentration in the atmosphere had risen to 48% above its pre-industrial level. Now India has to face irreversible impacts of climate crisis. Extreme weather events are also becoming more common throughout South Asia, including India, according to a report. In the next coming years, heat waves will grow more violent and frequent. Summer and monsoon rains will also increase and become more frequent. Extreme rainfall occurrences will increase by 20% across the Indian subcontinent. Rainfall will become more frequent and erratic, leading to floods. Depressions will strengthen deep into depressions, and cyclonic storms will become more common on the eastern and western coasts, according to estimates. Now, this will pose a huge threat to those living in locations vulnerable to sea level rise in India, which has a coastline of nearly 7,500 kilometers. And to deal with this increase in impacts of extreme weather events, we need to increase the resilience in our country, infrastructure and social institutions. At the same time, we must take steps to mitigate the situation. Adaptation and mitigations are the two strategies, are the two important strategies to deal with the climate change. Mitigation addresses the cause of climate change, and it is an intervention to reduce the emission resources or enhances the sink of greenhouse gases. Whereas adaptation addresses the impacts of climate change, and it is an adjustment in nature or human system in response to actual or expected climate stimuli. Again, furthermore, mitigation involves keeping homes away from flood pains, engineering bridges to withstand earthquake, creating and enforcing effective building codes to protect property from hurricanes and more. And it is further an important technique that reduces or eliminates long-term risk to people and property from natural hazards and their effects. It is further noted that even if emissions were stabilized now, global temperature would increase on average by further 0.6 degrees Celsius by 2100. Furthermore, some current targets to reduce emissions assume a global average temperature increase of about 1.5 degrees Celsius above present. A significant amount of potential impact will therefore need to be adapted. So, regardless of how effective are our efforts at mitigation. Now, every situation we deploy will have an irreversible consequences. We won't be able to get back the money we spend and undo the physical infrastructure we set up to meet our adaptation and mitigation goals. We will just have to do the best we can each time. Now, while climate change is a global issue, it is still felt on a local scale. Cities and municipalities are therefore at the front line of adaptation. In the absence of national or international climate policy direction, cities and local communities around the world have been focusing on solving their own climate problems. They are working to build flood defenses, plans for heat waves and high temperature, install water permeable pavements to better deal with floods and stormwater, and improve water storage and use. Now, to conclude, it is necessary to show, far from being inactive in India, that considerable action in terms of policies, programs, and projects need to be taken. Technology transfer can speed up the modernization process, and additional funds can accelerate government in the control of energy conservation. Furthermore, reducing socio-economic vulnerability continues to be a primary objective, and implementation of adaptation measures surely will have future benefits due to reduction in impacts associated with current climate variability. Apart from this, intensive research is also needed on the process of adaptation decision making, including identifying the roles and responsibilities of individuals, communities, nations, institutions, and the private sector in adaptation. It is now clear from the entire discussion that the magnitude and character of the problem of global climate change is such that a community-wide understanding and satisfactory response is very much required. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your enlightening speech relating to how to cope up with climate change and the solution for climate change, and also the need of environmental research.
Yes,
Despite the fact that I am from Mizoram, one of India's most forested states, we have seen and experienced a number of climate change, not only that natural disaster like landslides and agricultural issues and so on, and all of which I believe that it can be avoided with the help of good environmental preservations and awareness. Furthermore, most of the Northeast states and the rest of the world were also confronted with the same necessity of environmental protection. So without further ado, I now request the second speaker, Ms. Dr. K. Shyamla, to speak about environmental challenges and Gandhian alternatives. Ma'am, you can start your presentation.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, audible. Yes, yes.
Okay. Respected chair and other dignitaries and my fellow participants, a very good morning to you all. And at this very outset, let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers to giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts with you on my paper, Gandhian Alternatives to Environmental Challenges. As an introduction, I can tell that environment is typically a case of what we sow, so we reap, because our collective action has put an impact on the environmental we share. We all know that. Since the environment is at the brim, now it's our collective responsibility to work together for providing a brighter future for the coming generation. It includes a lifestyle that's self-sustaining, of course, resources that are adequate for all, development that is not compromising our ecosystem, flora, fauna, and the wildlife that are in safe hands, and the land, water, and air that is fit for humans as well as for all other forms of life. I think this seminar is a reminder of what Gandhiji meant when he said, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. So I thought in my paper, I would like to focus on the alternatives prescribed by Gandhi to the environmental challenges. For that, first let us have a brief look on what this environment as such it is. As we were discussing on this topic, the term environment has been defined as a region surrounding or circumstances in which anything exists, everything external to the organisms. To make it clear, all that surrounds the domain of human life and affects or influences life in general comes within the broad definition of environment, I think. And nowadays we are facing a number of environmental challenges, and we were discussing about that in the previous days papers, and that includes climate change, as Dr. Amit had mentioned, acidification and whatnot, all deterioration of coastal zones, waste accumulation, etc., etc., etc. No doubt, these environmental problems are mainly due to, I think it is mainly due to the wrong model of development. And of course, other reasons include population growth and increasing industrialization. And this is clearly given in one of the editorials of Yojana, on a very good journal. And it has mentioned that the environmental is now showing signs of degradation, which is bound to affect each one of us. Frequent floods, drought, abrupt weather cycle, crop patterns, changes, receding coastal areas, and some of these red flags glaring at the humanity. And decades of environmental decay is eventually posing threat to the entire ecosystem we are in. And our living standards are compromised, health is affected, and above all, the questions that entire existence of the current models of growth and development. Hence, we can say that violence against nature, which leads to unprecedented environmental crisis, is the most serious challenge before the contemporary world. To quote Paulo Freire, the great educationist and revolutionary, he has said, man is not in the world, but with the world. This means that man alone cannot be the measure of all the things, but nature also has to be taken care of. It's neither possible nor proper to separate human life from the natural environment, but with a growing species pride, human beings claim authority and power over the non-human components of nature. Materialistic and industrial culture is prompting humanity to hold wrong notions of independent existence and development isolated from the rest of the nature. It was pointed out by Professor M.P. Matai, who is an adjunct professor of Gujarat Vidyapith and an editor of Gandhi Mark. He told, the earth came to be viewed merely as a giant machine and a repository of material resources for human consumption. Humans were here to dominate, control, and manipulate nature using science and technology. The meaning and purpose of life were redefined, and physical welfare and sensuous enjoyment were elevated as the ultimate purpose of human existence. A brand of materialism evolved, and it replaced religion and spirituality. This, in turn, has led to the decline of harmony within human communities and also irreversible ecological imbalance. In this background, I think it is really relevant and necessary to analyze the significance of Gandhian ideals, and that will definitely help us to postulate a philosophical basis for environmental ethics. And my paper is a look into that, as I told you earlier. When we look into Gandhi's approach to nature, we can see that his concept of Sarvodaya stands for the welfare of all, and it includes all components of the environment. And according to him, nature is one family where every part and member of it lives peacefully. So Gandhi warned against any step towards exploitation of nature. He was against exploitation of any kind, as it was antithetical to the eternal principle of non-violence or ahimsa. In other words, his concept of ahimsa is not restricted to human beings alone, but finds its extension to the whole nature with its diverse beings and ecosystem. And this was clearly pointed out by another professor, Prem Anand Mishra, and he told that rather than looking the nature separate from human being, Gandhi submitted that we should feel a more living bond between ourselves and the rest of the animate world. He also suggested that humans and the nature must be in harmony rather than human being exploiting the nature for their pleasure. Here we see that Gandhi did not regard nature as an abstract entity because, according to him, nature finds its expression through earth, animals, rivers, mountains, etc. And he was of opinion that man is a trustee, just a trustee who is responsible for the subsistence and protection of all creatures. That includes the non-living things also. And this Gandhian idea of non-violence attempts to eradicate the root cause of the present ecological crisis by proposing the idea similar to the notion recently termed as human ecology. As noted, Gandhi does not see environment crisis in isolation. He intimately links environment to the very nature of other human institutions as a polity, economy, health, and mode of development, and calls for essential change in these fields. He strongly advocates green thought in our day-to-day life, as well as an economy and development model based on natural order to save ourselves from the catastrophe. And Gandhi's economics has obvious ecological undertones. The economy which can preserve the health of human beings, as well as the balance of nature, can be called as ecological economy. And the ideal of Gandhian economic is not to raise the material standards of living, but to improve the status and dignity of human beings. He insisted on satisfying the minimum wants for a decent living rather than pursuing luxuries and extravagance. In order to realize the goals of peace and harmony, Gandhi suggested the following. First of all, this is a very important point with regard to Gandhian economics, and he says that instead of mass production, we need production by the masses. And secondly, he stood for the promotion of agriculture and cottage industries, including Gandhi. And thirdly, Gandhi suggested the idea of trusteeship to give economy a social basis. From the above account, we can understand that Gandhi believed that environmental challenges today are mainly due to wrong economic planning and faulty model of development. It is nothing but economics without ethics, which causes the evils like inequality, alienation, and the greed. And this is because of the same reason he became a critic of modern industrial civilization. And in Gandhi's opinion, both capitalism and communism promote industrial economy and reckless exploitation of natural resources. Both are founded on violence and greed for material possessions at the cost of moral and spiritual values. Capitalists speak of development and progress. Communists swear in the name of economic equality. But both of them fail to consider eternal truth of human nature relationship and their interdependence. So they can lead to the depletion, they can only lead to the depletion of natural resources to deprive the present and the future generation of the eligible benefits of being born on earth. So Gandhi vehemently criticized industrial civilization as based on and promoting violence and greed. As an uncompromising champion of ahimsa, he was a critic of this industrial civilization, and he realized that urban civilization was undermining the law of ahimsa by instilling the spirit of competition and hostility. It is demoralizing and dehumanizing. That is why the existing society with its economic relations is becoming a battleground. According to Gandhi, machinery and industrialism, the obvious symbols of urban civilization, represent violence and sin, which are a curse on humankind and nature. They enslave the workers, sap their moral being, and cause unemployment and poverty of the majority in the society. By the overuse of natural resources, factory civilization is pirating the means of life for the future generations. And according to him, the true civilization is simple and morally upright. Life of self-restraint is vindicated. This lifestyle alone can preserve the harmony of internal and external environments. Gandhi had repeatedly asserted the ideal of abharigraha or voluntary disposition as the only means to ensure economic equality. And according to Gandhi, one is not necessarily happy because he is rich or unhappy because he or she is poor. Happiness is not a mark of progress or contentment. Satisfaction of the basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter, education is enough for making a civilized life. Coming to the Gandhian alternatives, which was suggested, but I would like to mention one more thing. However, Gandhi was not totally against this machinery. He clearly stated that what I object is to the craze of machinery, not machinery as such. The craze is for what they call labor-saving machinery. Men go on saving labor till thousands are without work and thrown on the open streets to die of starvation. So, Gandhian economics relies on the realization that India lives in her villages, which have long tradition of eco-friendly protection, prudent living. He considered that the development of cottage industries will help a lot for the protection of environment. And when we look into Gandhi's model as a source of inspiration and his alternatives, I can say that any one of us can wonder how far it is possible, or how this is possible to follow the Gandhian principles and of economics and ecological living in this world of development mania and obsessions of material pleasures. But I would like to mention that there is another side of it which shows that environmental degradation has already become manifest as the most serious threat to the subsistence of the human species on Earth. And it is certainly relevant to remember that Gandhi had thought and spoken about everything that is concerned in human life. And he had tried maximum to follow what he found to be truth in his personal life. So he said, my life is my message. And he also held that nature has given enough to satisfy our needs, but not our greeds. World does not have sufficient things to meet the greed of a single person. These words contain the warning to the whole humanity against our greedy invasions of nature, as its resources are not everlasting. So Gandhi insisted on a lifestyle that is least injurious to our environment. It requires us to consume less is as just sufficient to meet our basic needs. And Gandhi himself had shown the model by living such a life of austerity and self-sacrifice. Thus, for Gandhi, environmental challenges are ultimately moral challenges, which can be met only by a change in our personal attitude and value system. To conclude, we can say that the sustainable development does not end with sustainability of environment and resource system. It also requires sustainability of economic and social systems. Development and environmental protection should go together. It would be better to begin new projects with built-in environmental safeguards rather than make haste only to regret later. Growth without environmental safety can prove counterproductive in the long run. Here lies the importance of Gandhian alternatives suggested in this paper. More than a set of principles, Gandhi prescribed a way of life without any assault on the fellow human beings, as also upon non-human and non-living beings. This is the essence of Ahimsa, which is negatively non-violence and positively the loving compassion to all creatures. One may doubt the practicality of Gandhian ideals in the present day world, but none can ignore his warnings and prophecies about the human destiny in the future that will be determined specifically by our attitude to nature. So, the Gandhian way of ecological living is certainly relevant and important in the contemporary world scenario, mutilated by continuing exploitation and oppression of nature by a vast section of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am has rightly pointed out that violence against nature is the most serious challenge, and it is a high time to give importance to environmental protection through the help of Gandhian principle. And not only that, she also highlighted that environmental protection by mass is necessary. Okay, thank you, ma'am, for participating in the talk. Thank you so much. Third, I would like to introduce Mr. Rick Sarkar, who will speak about the topic on quest for spiritual ecology as ways of environmental conservationism in Mamang's Dai, Voice of the Mountain. Sir, you can give your presentation.
Thank you, Maria Clooney ma'am, for this brief introduction. I take this opportunity to also express my gratitude to the organizers, members of the organizing committee, for giving me this opportunity to present the paper. The title of my paper is Quest for Spiritual Ecology as Ways of Environmental Conservationism in Mamang Dai's Voice of the Mountain. And before, there are two parts of my paper. In the first part, I would like to deal with the concept of spiritual ecology, the definition regarding spiritual ecology. And in the next part, I would like to contextualize the whole thing within the poetic matrix of Mamang Dai's poem. So before I begin, let me first elaborate on the concept of spiritual ecology. It is a fast emerging field of academic study which deals with the intersections between religion, conservation, in that it recognizes the fact that there is a spiritual facet to all issues related to conservation, environmentalism. While analyzing spiritual ecology, one of its main leading practitioners, Llewellyn Van Lee, in his book, Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth, argues that our present ecological crisis is rooted in urgent spiritual questions. It is a challenge to bring humanity back into harmony with the life systems that support us. One of the response to present planetary crisis is greening the economy, which looks to technological innovations to ensure sustainable development without degrading nature further. But it sidesteps a deeper question that suggests our present ecological crisis requires a spiritual and moral response. Incidentally, this sentiment was similarly echoed by Pope Francois in his second encyclical entitled Laudato Si, which has a subtitle on care for our common home, which underlies the need to look at the spiritual and moral issues brought about by the unprecedented destruction of ecosystems we are inflicting upon the earth. Native American faith keeper Chief Orion Lyons stressed upon the role of thanksgiving and the spiritual laws as a response to present ecological crisis. To put it in the word of Buddhist activist Joanna Mercy, as she says, as our heart breaks open, there will be room for the world to heal, referring to the unmitigated destruction caused by human action. And it is against such a backdrop, I would like to, such an understanding of spiritual ecology, I would like to look into the poetry of Mamang Dai. And Mamang Dai employs certain elemental symbols found in nature Her poetry is the poetry of the earth, to quote the title of one of John Keats' famous poem. A poet, a novelist, and a journalist, Mamandai, who belongs to the Adi tribe, left the lucrative job of the Indian Administrative Service to pursue a career in poetry, has unequivocally stressed the role of geography, landscape, myths, and stories have played in shaping her poetic sensibility, carefully building a poetic narrative away from the scourge of insurgency and militancy. She writes of the elements of nature like clouds, rivers, mountains. Together they form a homeland in spiritual sense. In fact, this tendency to mystify nature is a common element in many of the writers hailing from the Northwest, including Temesla Au Munazeti. In Voice of the Mountains, Dai says that the mountain can identify with the rain and the desert. The recreation of the past is made possible by the mountain. The mountains knows the cloud intimately and have a clear inkling of the impending rain. Thus, the geographical concept of mountain as a bearer of rain and rain-shedding natural structures are interlinked with the philosophy of hill tribes. In the nature, faith, and worship among Adis, Dai has remarked that the great forests, mountains, and the environment has shaped the consciousness of the Adi people intrinsic to their spiritual worldview. What Mamundai seems to suggest through her poetry that the kinship of human beings extends to other species and elements, and to quote a few lines from Dai's poem, that is Birthplace, we are the children of the rain, of the cloud woman, brother to the shore, and bat in our cradle of bamboo. Thus, by objectifying non-human forces and species, and also by deifying nature, Dai seems to point towards an ecological vision where the hierarchy between human and the non-human forces are abolished, and the relationship between them is one of equality. In envisioning such an egalitarian society, thus is also critical of the concept of development, materialism, and utter disregard for non-human forces. Deep ecology, as scholars put it in reference to Mamandai's poem, is an outright repudiation of the anthropocentric and hierarchical human outlook with the solution of ecocentrism with the moral and spiritual underpinnings. Therefore, Mamandai's approach to nature as a poet belonging to the Adi community, identifying herself with their old view system of belief, is one of spiritual reciprocity to promote and uphold a harmonious relationship among all species. Thank you. That will be all.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for sharing your interesting topic relating to spiritual ecology and clearly explain the concept of spiritual ecology, and not only that about Mamund's Dai. Thank you, sir, so much. It is a very interesting topic and well done. Now, last but not the least, I now request Ms. Priya Darshini Goswami to give a presentation on the topic, a jurisprudential study on climate change, Indian laws, and the role of the judiciary. Ma'am, you can start your presentation.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Good morning, respected resource person and my fellow presenter. At the very outset, I would like to thank the organizer of this international conference to present my paper. The title of my paper is Jurisprudential Study on Climate Change, Indian Laws and Rule of Judiciary. So we know that climate change is one of the burning problem worldwide. And in our country also, India is one of the vulnerable country to deal with the problem of climate change. So climate change is normally known as a long-term significant change in the climate over a period of time caused by the nature or human activities. Climate change is already happening and represents one of the greatest environmental and social and economical threat facing the planet. And we know that India is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. And also, India is the third largest emitter of the greenhouse gases in the world after China and United States. And there are different international organizations, including United Nations and European Union, has been long effort to combat climate change, but still it's going on. And in our country, in India, even before the independence, there are several environmental legislation existed for the protection of the environment. But the real motivation to bring about a well-developed framework came only after the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, United Nations Conference on Human Environment, which was held in the year of 1972 at Stockholm. After that, India enacted many laws like Air Pollution Act, Water Pollution Act, Wild Protection Act, then Environment Protection Act, etc. In my article, this is an attempt to make the discussion about the various issues of climate change and Indian laws, and also the rule of the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, rule of the Supreme Court. Now, if you will see what is the climate, normally the climate refers to the sum total of the weather condition and variations over large area for a long period of time. Our description of a climate includes the information, example, the average temperature in different seasons, rainfall and sunshine, etc. And there are approximately five main climate types in Earth: the tropical, the dry, temperature, continental, and polar. Now, climate change also refers to the kind of weather that's typically expected in a region. This includes the describing the range of the conditions that are possible. So now what are the reasons behind the climate change? Although there are more than 100 of reasons for the climate change, but mainly the natural reasons, that includes the volcanic eruption, the solar radiation, etc. Are important. Then due to these activities, the geographical conditions of an area becomes quite harmful for the life to survive. Also, these activities raise the temperature of the earth to a great extent, causing an imbalance in life. And there is one more reason important, that is human reason. We are responsible for this climate change. Man, due to his need and greed, has done many activities that not only harm the environment but himself too. So the human activities like deforestation, using of fossil fuels, then industrial waste and different types of pollutions are and many more are the reason. Now, what about the effect? So the climate change have a negative impact on the environment. The ocean level is rising, the glaciers are melting, the carbon dioxide in the air is increasing, forests and wildlife are declining, and the water life is also getting disturbed due to the climate change. So if the climate change keeps on going like this, then many species of planet and animal will get extinct, and there will be a heavy loss to the environment. Now, what are the existing legal provisions in our country to deal with the problem of climate change in India? Though there is no specific legislation in India to combat or deal with the problem of climate change, hence, in the absence of a specific law, the most crucial legislation that comes closer to the tackling the problem of climate change is the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. So this was enacted with the help of Article 253 of Constitution of India. And the main, because why this act is connected to climate change? Because air pollution is one of the major reasons behind the climate change. So what are the objectives of this act? Mainly to prevent, control and abate air pollution, to penalize these offenses, also to provide the powers to the state government as well as state board and central board to deal with the problem of air pollution. And it also provides the air must be restored and maintained for the future. So this act is a comprehensive one with more than 51 sections. It makes provisions for the central as well as state boards to power to declare pollution control area, restriction on certain industrial units, authority of the boards to limit emission of air pollutants, power to entry, inspect, then taking samples from the industries, analyzes those samples, penalties, offenses by the companies, industries, and government, etc. This Air Act, which was enacted in the year of 1981, is important in the sense it provides for the prevention, control, and abatement of air pollution, as the presence of air pollutant in the atmosphere is injurious to the human being as well as other living creatures. So, by taking of a direct link between the air pollution and its effect on the whole environment, the Air Act addresses a key area related to climate change. The Air Act, however, does not mention the term climate change, but it is indirectly connected to the climate change problem. Now, after that, we have one more act, that is Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, which was enacted in the year of 1974. And the Water Act provides for the prevention, control, and abatement of water pollution. And both Water and Air Act have similar provisions with respect to achieving the above mentioned objectives. Now, after Water Act and Air Act, the Parliament enacted Environment Protection Act 1986 to fill up the gaps in India's core body of environmental law. The purpose of the Environment Protection Act 1986 is to provide for the protection and improvement of environment. And the act covers all forms of pollution, whether it is air, water, noise, soil, everything. So it provides the safe standard for the presence of various pollutants in the environment. It prohibits the use of hazardous materials unless prior permission is taken from the central government. The government can also lay down emission standards, which are to be found in the schedule to the Environment Protection Rules 1986. Further, the rules framed under Environment Protection Act also lay down emission norms for the specific industries as well as general emission standards. The central government also enacted the Ozone Depleting Substances Regulation and Control Rules 2000 in exercise of its power conferred by Section 6, Section 8, and Section 25 of Environment Protection Act. The rules prohibits any person from production, consumption of ozone depleting substances, and from importing and exporting to any country without a license issued by the authority. Now let's discuss about the role of the judiciary. Mainly the Supreme Court of India, that means the apex court of India, is broadly considering the meaning of the Article 21. Article 21, that is the fundamental right of Constitution of India, has made an attempt to address the problem of climate change and also try to attempt the challenges arising from the climate change. In a case, that is State of MP versus Kedia Leather and Liquor Limited, the Supreme Court stated that Article 21 of Indian Constitution has been held to include the right to enjoy pollution-free air and water to full enjoyment of life. There is one more case, that is the Supreme Court of India in Kedia Leather and Liquor Limited case held that the environmental, ecological, air and water pollution amount to violation of rights to life assured by the Article 21 of Constitution. Hygienic environment in an integral part of the healthy life, right to life with human dignity, becomes and in the absence of human and healthy environment. In order to protect the life, in order to protect the environment, in order to protect the air, water, soil from the pollution, the Supreme Court, though its various judgments have been effect to the rights available to the citizen and persons alike under Article 21. Now, I will like to conclude. That is, though it is an urgent need to enact a specific law. Though we have many indirect laws to deal with the problem of climate change, but we need a direct law to deal with the problem of this problem of climate change. And since the existing legal frameworks in India lack seriously when it comes to the climate change, so Parliament should enact a law immediately to deal with the problem of climate change. And there needs to be a strong national environmental policy which should include clear-cut rules which regard to environmental pollution and waste management while giving licenses to the industries' houses. And since vehicles contribute to air pollution in a significant manner, a practical solution needs to be developed to curb this issue. And the state must take initiative to encourage community participation, and because public participation is very important in monitoring pollution. And though India has ratified several international conventions to climate change, but none of the provisions of these international agreements can be implemented by the Indian states per se. Hence, India needs to frame a new laws to incorporate those provisions in order to implement them in its a later spirit. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your ideas relating to various issues of climate change and the reason for climate change. And not only that, you have mentioned about the legal provisions for protection of climate change. Thank you so much, ma'am. And before that, I would like to request Mr. Hafizullah Sheikh to mute yourself. It's a distract others. Please mute yourself. Hafizullah Sheikh, Mr. Hafizullah Sheikh. Please mute yourself.
Okay.
And now we'll have a discussion session. So if anyone has any questions or any recommendations about any of the issues we have discussed, or if you have any explanations relating to that, please kindly do so. Still we have time. Any questions from the participant side?
Ma'am, I guess there's no queries, so you can
Okay,
continue with
then
the discussion.
time is okay. Okay, thank you. Time is running out for the second session, so we'll try to wrap up the program. Before that, I would like to request all the participants that we have only one Earth, and its conservation lies in the hands of all of us, regardless of our culture or our country. So let us all try to endeavor the world a better place for living for our next generation, while we still have the time to do so. So the first session has come to an end. Once again, thank you to everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you all.